Hi, and welcome to this edition of Fresh Hope for Mental Health. Our mission here at Fresh Hope for Mental Health is to empower you to live well in spite of your mental health challenge by sharing insights through interviews, practical tools for living well, encouragement, and courage for overcoming all from a Christian perspective. And now, here's your host, Pastor Brad Hoefs.
Hello, my friend, and welcome to Fresh Hope for Mental Health. I'm Brad Hoefs, your host, and our purpose here on Fresh Hope for Mental Health is to empower you to live a faith-filled, rich, and full life in spite of having a mental health diagnosis. Well, I want to talk to you today about something that too many of us do. And it's not just those of us who have a mental health issue that do these things, do this. It's a lot of people. It's more of a thinking issue than a diagnosis or anything like that. I want to talk to you about overthinking. If you're anything like I am, overthinking can really be a problem. There's many times where I just get frozen and I can't move forward because I don't know what the right decision is. I don't know what the perfect decision is going to be. I just look at every angle and every angle and every angle, and I just end up not doing anything, which is a decision in most cases. Now, prior to being diagnosed for me, I was a person of decision all the time. I was impulsive. There were times where I acted and I should have waited. There were times that I should have thought about things, that it probably would have been a good idea to spend some time thinking about it, praying about it, sleeping on it, and yet I didn't. Of course, for those of us who have bipolar disorder, that's part of the grandiose thinking that we know exactly what needs to happen, and we have a hard time controlling impulses if we're not treated for the bipolar disorder. Well, in any case, I think I overcompensated and have overcompensated in the last 25 years or so, since 1995, and really stopped acting and making decisions and became frozen because of overthinking. Now, I've come to the conclusion that what I need to do is stop overthinking, but I should think through things. In other words, it's healthy to think through things, to ask yourself, okay, what should I do this, or would it be better to do this? To take some time to process. Thinking through things is a good thing to do. And it helps us to be cautious with our choices and make the right choices and really be level-headed about them. But the trouble comes when that thinking through begins to be overthinking. And overthinking is when there are no new questions, there are no new things. We're just rehearsing kind of the same old thing over and over and over. Or we're so much doing research and thinking about it that we're obsessing about it. Or when it actually stops us from being able to make a decision. Many decisions that we have to make are very subjective. They're not as objective as we might think. So sometimes decisions are objective and we want to make a subjective one. We want to make a heart decision when it has to be a head decision. I know with buying a car, for instance, if I'm going to start looking for a vehicle, and make the decision to start looking, I don't want to look forever. And you can't look and then stop looking and then start looking and stop looking and start looking. Then in that case, I'll never get one purchased. And so I've learned and am learning about the difference between thinking through something and then overthinking through something. Overthinking. And where it starts to cause mental agony for you. Where you go to bed at night and you think, oh, I should have thought about this differently. Why did I do that? And you just begin to beat yourself up over something you've said or done, or you're not able to decide about how to do something because you're sure that whether you do this will happen, and then that'll happen, and what if this, what if that, and you're just filled with what ifs, and it just disrupts your life. It puts it on hold. It puts important decisions on hold. Well, there's certain things that might be signs of overthinking that you might want to watch out for, and one is that you can't sleep because of it. You can't turn your mind off. You can't turn your thinking off, and you're still what-ifing and what about this and et cetera, and it's causing you anxiety would be another symptom. Holding on to the past sometimes can be a symptom of overthinking, that you just want what was past and you can't even get it or have it. And the decision to move forward is so fearful to you that you just hold on to the past. Of course, to me, overthinking is indecisiveness. So if you just cannot make a decision about something, many times that's certainly a symptom of overthinking. I would also say that overanalyzing is a symptom of, overthinking. Especially if you start analyzing it a second time, a third time, a fourth time, trying to think, okay, is there anything else that I should be analyzing? Things like that. Now, sometimes our overthinking is driven by perfectionism or self-criticism. Sometimes it's because of stress. Sometimes it's about worrying about the outcomes of whatever decision it might be that we're overthinking. So I want to give you some very practical thinking about how to stop overthinking your life and to start living. And I'm going to be honest, my source for this is from moneyhabit.muse.com. And I thought it was interesting that a money site had some interesting things about not overthinking. So the number one thing they suggest is catch your overthinking instantly. Instantly recognize it. I'm starting to overthink this. They say overthinking is a dream killer, and sometimes you can drown yourself in your thoughts. The moment you catch yourself overthinking, you got to say it out loud. I'm overthinking this. Uh-oh, I'm doing it again. Hey, get out of my head. I've got the statistics. I got the facts that I need from my head. Now I need to make a decision, and I need to stop the flow of overthinking, because it'll just go on and on and on. Put a stop to it, and stop that constant barrage of, I better not. Oh, should I? Shouldn't I? Et cetera, et cetera. Number two, replace those thoughts of overthinking. Winston Churchill said, let our advanced worrying become advanced thinking and planning. So sometimes you just can think about something to the point where you get worried sick about it. That's overthinking. What if I mess up? What if this happens? What if that? What if? It just adds fuel to your fretful mind and your afraid mind. So you got to replace the thoughts with calm. Tell yourself, calm down. The things that I can do something about, I will. The things that I cannot do anything about, well, I can't do anything about those things. So you need to divert your time and focus from the unhealthy worries and anxiety to productive research and what you can change and what you can't. And then when you recognize that overthinking, you replace those thoughts with something positive and you engage in positive action. Also, I would add that you say, okay, Lord, I'm going to make this decision. I'm going to go ahead with this. I'm going to stop overthinking this, and you lead me and guide me, and I'm going to trust that no matter how the outcome is, it's all in your plans, and you've still got a plan. Number 3, allocate a time slot for overthinking. I like this one. Donna and I learned from a therapist early on that if you just allocate times to do certain kinds of things like grieving or whatever it might be, and just say, I'm going to do that for a few minutes and then I'll be done with it. And it was very interesting because it works. Thinking too much leads to paralysis by analysis. That's a good line. Thinking too much leads to paralysis by analysis. It's important to think things through, but many use thinking as a means of avoiding action. All right? So it's a trick. You start and you say, I'm going to overthink for 15 minutes or 20 minutes. And then you say, stay put. It's not your turn anymore. I'm moving on. And when the allocated time comes, you get all of your thoughts down on paper. And when it's over, you move on. And then you essentially do what you can and make a decision based upon the true thinking through something, truly thinking through it. Number 4, ignore assumptions and seek facts. When you are thinking through something before you've started to overthink, when you're thinking through it, look for facts, not fear and emotional apprehension regarding things, but look for the facts. Don't let overthinking create problems that don't exist, Zig Ziglar said. So many times we spend a lot of time overthinking and fearing things that never happen. And so you just need to sometimes ignore your assumptions, ignore your fears, and just find out what the facts are. Number 5, watch out for your energy flow. Overthinking is probably a product of underdoing, was said by a Yehuda Berg. And the whole point of many times we're procrastinating or we don't want to move forward because it's not going to be perfect. What if it's not perfect? Or I just mess up so many things, I'm afraid to make this decision. And so you have to keep reminding yourself, I can control where I place my awareness in the moment. And I can be in control of the energy that I'm pouring out on this to the point where I'm going to focus on the facts that I know, and I'm going to make an intellectual decision, and I'm going to move forward. It's all in our own doing, therefore. And so we can undo it, so to speak, by watching out where we're letting our energy flow. Because if you just let the energy flow with the overthinking, all of a sudden it's going to take all of your energy to overthink the situation. And you'll be tired, exhausted, and you won't be able to even move forward. Some final thoughts in regards to it. Remember, today is the tomorrow you worried about yesterday. So be mindful of the choices and where you place your awareness, where you spend your time, and don't let that just all be on automatic pilot. Sometimes you have to say, okay, I've thought through this as much as I can. I'm going to make the best decision that I can at this moment with all the information I have, or I will begin to be overthinking and I will get frozen. So I think this is a list that's interesting. You might be an overthinker you might be an overthinker if you second guess everything you do or don't do. You might be an overthinker if you analyze things to death. You might be an overthinker if you catastrophize or expect the worst. You might be an overthinker if you have insomnia. You might be an overthinker if you hate making decisions or simply can't make decisions. You might be an overthinker if you would rather someone decides it for you. You might be an overthinker if you regret often. You might be an overthinker if you can't let things go. You might be an overthinker if you take things personally when they weren't intended for you personally. You might be an overthinker if you are a perfectionist. You might be an overthinker if you criticize yourself a lot. You might be a thinker if you never feel 100% certain about anything. You might be an overthinker if you feel tense. And last, you might be an overthinker if you feel like you can't turn your brain off. I hear a lot of people say they can't turn their brain off at nighttime. Well, there you have it, a little insight into how to stop overthinking and moving on with your life and living it. Well, my friend, I hope that that's been helpful to you. We'd really like to hear from you if you have topics or things you'd like us to talk about on the podcast and address, or someone that you'd like us to interview. Just email me at pastorbrad@freshhope.us. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to connect with you on social media. We're on all the typical social media places. And if you would do me a favor, if you're listening to this podcast through iTunes, would you evaluate it or make a comment on the iTunes app about the podcast? And that helps other people find the podcast. We have groups, we have materials, we have lots of free resources. Be sure and check out our Fresh Hope website. It's freshhope.us, www.freshhope.us. And be sure and tell your friends about this. And I'm sure glad you took time to listen to this podcast. And I pray that you will be able to stop overthinking and move on. And also for you to be able to think through things carefully, but not overthink them, and make the best decisions possible. You know, one of the things that happens for those of us who have a mental health issue is we do all this therapy and we begin to learn to not trust ourselves in some respects, or to get too much inside of our heads. And sometimes you have to get out of your head and you do what you can and you make a decision and you move forward, and then you trust the Lord. And so I hope that's what will be true for you. Until next time, may the Lord fill you with His hope, fresh and new daily. I'm Brad Hoefs, and this has been another edition of Fresh Hope for Mental Health.
You've been listening to Fresh Hope for Mental Health. If you have an opportunity, please review, share, and subscribe to the Fresh Hope for Mental Health podcast on iTunes or on the service that you use. We encourage you to share our podcast on social media with your friends and family. Previous podcasts of Fresh Hope for Mental Health can be found at freshhopeformentalhealth.com, iHeartRadio, Stitcher Radio, and iTunes. Fresh Hope is one of the leading networks of faith-based peer support groups internationally. For more information about Fresh Hope, go to freshhope.us.